Hi, Tim Alden here. We're going to do our last pattern in this group of teardrop earring patterns. So we're going to wet up our piece of leather here. If you're just getting to us, we put packing tape over our pattern and then cut it out. That way the wet leather doesn't mess with our pattern and we can reuse this. Just going to line it up there. And we're going to go over it with our stylus. So I usually just kind of work through the pattern and really try to make sure that I get every line in there. I'm just going to mark the center. We aren't going to cut that out. We just want a placement for our flower center. Okay, so we've got our pattern on there. Go ahead and start with our swivel knife. You just want to make sure you know which element is dominant and which is going to go underneath. Okay, so now that our swivel knife work's done, we're going to do some beveling. Okay, so we're going to mark our flower center. This is a Jueschke number 69 flower center. I don't sell these. I don't get paid to tell you this, but it's a cute little round flower center. And so I would recommend for this pattern just using a small round flower center. Kind of whatever fits. So now that we've gotten that marked, we can go ahead and start with our beveling. And I'm going to use our number 1 for a lot of these curves. Number 1 checkered beveler. If you can't fit the whole thing, you can just use a corner of it. Some people will use an aught beveler, which is about a 1/16 of an inch for Barry King's aught beveler. But I usually just tip it to the side. Okay, so now we're going to come in with a lifter. We're just going to lift. This is our aught lifter, Berry King. And we might use the number 1 on this one, see if it'll fit. Just kind of create some depth there. Those turnbacks. So now that our beveling's pretty much done, so we're going to go ahead and bar ground what we can, just kind of define this pattern a little bit, because we might end up mashing it down since it's so small. Mashing down the background. Background just a little bit right there in that turn back. And this turn back. This is a number 35 5-seed bar grounder, Berry King. You can get the smaller numbers of seeds if you like, but I usually just use the 5-seed and then tip it if I need to get in a smaller area. So now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and use our smooth thumbprint that we've roughed up with 80 grit sandpaper. It's a number 1 Berry King. We're going to create some depth coming out of that turn back here. And the same thing with this, just come from where you've lifted, kind of draw that out. I'm going to use our smaller end here. This little sticker, kind of roll around with it. And then come back to the bigger side, to the front of this turn back. Okay, so now we're going to use our vertical line thumbprint to shade from the flower center out. And so we've marked this, and we just want to go slightly over that mark. We're going to do a pretty steep angle coming out here. We don't want to go too far to the sides. We want to create that depth there in this petal. Just slightly covering up where our flower center is going to go. But leaving some meat for that flower center to sit in. Just kind of fan this out a little bit. And then we're going to come back with our smooth thumbprint again. And basically on these petals, we're going to we want to point this towards the flower center. And you can kind of hit those scallops, and then we can kind of draw this out. This thumbprint is pretty small. We just kind of want to mirror that image and roll up and over into the other side. And just kind of show that that petal is rolling up and over. This is where older style pear shader actually works pretty good on stuff like this. I usually take them to the grinder and put more belly on them so they're not so flat. But they get that nice pear shaded look to these petals. Okay, now that we've gotten that shaded, we can come back with our flower center and sink that. Just make sure it's good and lined up there. So now we're going to come back with our lined veiner and just give some depth to these petals. You want to go with the dominant petal, so that's the one over the top with your angle. Just kind of tip it in there. Create some depth. So we're going to give this a little bit of texture with our larger bar grounder. I believe it's a number 45. 5-seed bar grounder. Just a little bit on the flower stem. Kind of creating a little V shape coming down. And we might throw in a little mule's foot. If you had a tiny little mule's foot, this would probably be a good spot for it. And then we're going to do some deco cuts here. Okay, so we'll start with our little turn back here, and just like a sticker, we're going to roll around and just kind of accentuate what's already there, that shape. Taper off. And then we can do some shading lines, radiating out from under where we've lifted there, cross hatchet coming out, give it some depth. Roll around with that. Taper that off. And then on this flower, you can kind of see how it has some flow to it. And might just go ahead and cut these in, following that flow. It's kind of an older style of dress cuts than I typically do, but I feel it's fitting for this little flower. And there we have it. Well, thanks a bunch. I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our page, and we'll see you next time.